In the middle of the Pacific, a small island raised giants. More than 800 stone figures stood watch along its shores. They were carved from a volcano and moved across rough ground without wheels or beasts. People say the statues walked. The story you know ends in ruins and silence. The real story is more human and more astonishing. The Moai were not idols. They were ancestors. Their journey carries invention, devotion, catastrophe, and a return to pride. Rapa Nui sits far from any shore. It lies more than 3,500 kilometers from Chile and more than 2,000 from the next inhabited island. Isolation shaped everything here. The mystery is not only how such a small society carved and moved its giants. It is how people built a world in stone, held it together for centuries, and then fought to keep it alive through disease, slavery, and colonization. The stakes are present tense. Wildfires scorch quarry slopes. Waves chew at coastal platforms. Sacred statues live abroad in foreign halls. At the same time, a cultural revival is growing on the island. If we follow this tale from first landfall to modern stewardship, we see that the Moai are not a puzzle piece for outsiders. They are the living faces of a people who are still here. Rapa Nui tradition says a navigator named Hotu Matua led canoes to a sandy beach at Anakena. They arrived with stars for maps and memory as their guide. Archaeology places permanent settlement around the 12th century of our era. That dating moves the story later than once thought, but it fits the pattern of bold Polynesian expansion. The land they found was small and volcanic. Fresh water was scarce and often trapped in porous lava. Farming took invention. The people brought a toolkit that had served their cousins across the ocean. They carried taro and bananas. They raised chickens. They built stone gardens. They spread broken rock across fields to trap dew and hold warmth in the soil. They organized themselves into lineages and clans. Chiefs ruled, priests advised, and labor was mobilized for ritual work. 3 volcanic cones framed the horizon. On the slopes of one, the mountain itself became a workshop. Say the word Moai, and most of us picture a stone head with a heavy brow. That is an illusion created by time and soil. The statues are full figures. The average height is about 4 meters. The average weight sits around 12 tons. The largest one ever raised reached 10 meters and more than 80 tons. Many others never left the quarry and sleep with their bodies buried to the chest. The stone is soft volcanic tuff from Rano Raraku. Tool marks still cover its face. Some statues wear red topknots cut from a different stone called scoria. A few once received coral and obsidian eyes. When those eyes were set, the ancestor awoke. The phrase in Rapa Nui is Aringa Ora Atatapuna. It means the living faces of the ancestors. The statues stood on stone platforms called ahu. They faced inland toward gardens and homes. They watched over the bones of clan founders buried in vaults within the platforms. They were family made visible. Walk into the quarry at Rano Raraku, and you stand in a frozen factory. Shapes emerge from the cliff. Some lie on their backs. Others rest on their sides. A few lean forward, as if the hill itself is giving birth. The process followed a rhythm. Carvers outlined a figure in the cliff face. They cut around it with basalt chisels and left a thin keel of stone beneath. Teams smoothed the front while the statue still clung to the mountain. Lines of the nose and lips took shape. Hands were carved against the ribs. The base received a slight curve. When the roughing out was complete, workers undercut the back and freed the image. Once released, the figure was slid downslope for finishing. Eye sockets were prepared for a future day. The base was beveled for the trip. Weeks turned into months as the mountain yielded ancestor after ancestor. The quarry holds hundreds still. It reads like a ledger of labor, faith, and time. Every ahu marked a community's heart. Platforms ring the island's coasts in a long necklace. They sit near ancient villages and springs. They claim rights to land and sea. Within the platforms, tombs held bones of named people. Above them, their images watched. The exchange was mutual. The living gave offerings and work. The dead gave protection and fertility. Food grew, fish returned, children thrived. The system tied memory to place. It also tied prestige to stone. Over generations, clans raised more statues and reached for larger sizes. A strong chief could display power by mobilizing labor to carve and move a massive figure. Success proved favor with the ancestors. Favor brought more success. That cycle pushed art and engineering to a peak. It also made rivalry visible. Power moved with stone until the island changed course. By the time European ships crossed the horizon, statue carving had waned. A different ritual structure had risen. On the rim of the volcano, Ranokau sits a stone village called Orongo. Here, a new contest took shape. Each year, men climbed down sea cliffs, swam through surf to a small islet, and searched for the first bird egg of the season. The champion carried the egg back unbroken and won his leader a sacred title for the year. The winner's clan gained authority until the next season. Petroglyphs of a strange figure with a human body and a bird head cover the rocks. The god of this age is called Make. A famous statue now in London, Hua Hakananaya, bears these symbols carved on its back. This suggests an older ancestor was retired into the new order. The shift did not erase the Moai. It placed them in a different frame of power when times grew tighter. The island once carried a forest of tall palms. Pollen cores and charcoal traces show a long decline. People cleared land for gardens. Fires burned. Rats that arrived with the first canoes gnawed palm seeds. Regrowth failed. By the 17th century, the great trees were gone. The loss cut deep. Without big timber, long-distance fishing faltered. Soil eroded. Harvests suffered. This is where popular stories insert a simple fall. The claim says people cut down every tree to move statues and doomed themselves. The record shows something more complex. Stone mulching spread across fields. Chicken pens multiplied. Platforms continued to be built into the period of first contact. Communities adapted and kept ritual life alive. There were conflicts. There were hard years. Yet the system did not shatter on its own. The true collapse arrived from beyond the horizon. Dutch sailors first sighted the island on an Easter Sunday in 1722. They saw some statues standing and others fallen. They traded a little and fired their guns after a clash of signs and language. Decades later, a Spanish ship claimed the land on paper. In 1774, James Cook came with Polynesian interpreters. He found wary people, scant timber, and a landscape that seemed barren to European eyes. He still saw Moai upright on some platforms. Over the next century, ships brought disease. The worst blow fell in the 1860s, when Peruvian raiders seized about 1,500 islanders for mines and plantations. Elders and ritual experts were taken. Most died in captivity. A few who returned carried smallpox. The population plummeted to 111 by 1877. During that age of grief and rage, the statues fell. Groups toppled rival ancestors in a practice remembered as Huri Moai. Breaking the neck as the statue hit the ground cut the enemy's mana. By the time missionaries settled a permanent mission and Chile annexed the island, none of the giants stood. Rapa Nui people were confined to one town, while ranchers grazed sheep over sacred grounds. The world called the island a mystery and a ruin. The people who lived there knew it as a prison. The first careful survey came in 1914. Catherine Routledge mapped platforms and listened to elders. She saved stories in print that might have vanished with the last speakers. In the 1950s, Thor Heyerdahl tried experiments and attracted headlines. He got much wrong about origins, but his public passion drew attention to the island. Later, work shifted from spectacle to science. Archaeologists documented around 887 statues. Excavations at the quarry revealed that many heads had full bodies below ground. Scholars learned that carvers decorated backs with fine motifs that wind never scoured because soil covered them. In 1979, a Rapa Nui archaeologist named Sergio Rapu found fragments of coral eyes. Restorations placed replicas into sockets on selected statues. Tourists saw faces come alive again. The most dramatic modern project rose at Ahu Tongariki on the island's east coast. 15 huge figures once stood there before they fell in the wars of the past. A tsunami in 1960 hurled them inland. In the 1990s, a joint team of Chilean archaeologists and Japanese engineers raised them back to position. A crane lifted. A platform was rebuilt. The line of giants returned to the skyline. In 1995, the island's cultural landscape entered the World Heritage List. Recognition brought support and responsibility. It also brought crowds. Conservation now fights rain, wind, lichens, careless shoes, and hooves. Fire added a new threat. In 2022, a blaze scorched the quarry and blackened about 100 statues. Local leaders cried as if kin had been burned. That grief makes sense in a culture where ancestors take stone form. Work crews now chart cracks, test surfaces, and plan shelters. Even as danger grows, science keeps offering new insight. In 2023, a burial in the dried lake of the quarry revealed another statue. The mountain keeps its secrets, but not forever. Some ancestors live far from home. The best known stands in London. Its name is Hoa Hakananaya. British sailors took it in 1868 during a time when Rapa Nui had no power to refuse. The statue had stood on a platform, then later in a house at Orongo. Birdman symbols cover its back. It was gifted to a queen and then placed in a museum gallery where it draws millions of eyes, but no offerings. In 2018, Rapa Nui leaders asked for it to return. They called it a family member. Talks began and continue. Other statues sit in Paris and Washington. Some rest in museums in Chile. Each piece carries a story of loss. Each request asks the same thing. Let the ancestor watch over its people again. Museums counter with language of global heritage. The islanders answer that global respect can grow after return, through loans and shared displays on their terms. The debate mirrors arguments across the world. Behind policies stand human bonds that are not easily measured. After the disasters of the 19th century, the people endured. In the 20th, they regained rights and citizenship. In recent years, they took leadership of their parklands. An indigenous organization called Ma'u Henua now co-manages the national park with the state. Island guides protect sites and teach visitors. Schools teach the Rapa Nui language. Carvers pass skills to younger hands. Every year, a festival lights up the island. It is called Tapati. Teams race reed sleds down slopes. Dancers paint bodies with ancestral designs. Songs retell history in rhythm and rhyme. You write books, one elder says to outsiders. We write songs. Dancing is our history. That line explains the living pulse behind the stones. Tourism keeps the economy running. Planes bring thousands. Families run lodges. Guides lead dawn walks to Tongariki. This success brings challenges. Too many feet can scar fragile ground. Waste and water must be managed with care. The community has set limits on migration, and is debating caps on visitors. The hardest fights come from the sea. Storms now run higher. Studies warn that by later this century, waves and rising water could bite into platforms that once felt safe above surf. Moving statues inland sounds unthinkable. It may become necessary for a few exposed sites. The people who saved their culture from extinction are now asked to save their ancestors from the ocean. It is a heavy duty. It is also a chance to carry the story forward. The Moai show what a small society can do with belief, patience, and shared purpose. They also show how fragile that world becomes when violence and disease crash through an open door. The lesson here is not a simple warning or a simple triumph. It is a record of human creativity under pressure. It is a record of grief and repair. When a statue rises again on a platform, it is not a tourist pose. It is an ancestor standing back up. When a museum case opens and a stone figure journeys home, it is not a box that moves. It is a family reunion. What should happen to ancestor statues held abroad? Should world museums keep them for global access, or should they go home first and return to the world on Rapa Nui terms? Tell us where you stand. If you want more untold histories that balance myth with evidence and center the people whose stories we tell, subscribe and join us next time.